Hi, I'm Governor John Rolle from the Central Bank of the Bahamas, and today I'm speaking with Occupy Mentorship Program on the importance of financial literacy. I grew up on the family island of Andros, so I would have attended all-age school until the 10th grade, until I was about to enter the 10th grade. Then I came to New Providence or Nassau, and I went to the public school and did my education. Went to College of the Bahamas and was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go off to university, discover the central bank over the course of summer employment, and from there we had a relationship. What I think is very important in that process is that I took as much opportunity of getting an education in the Bahamas before I transitioned. And it also demonstrated, which is very important from a financial literacy point of view, that as Bahamians, you can get a quality education in the Bahamas, even in the public schools, because it's all down to studying. And you use that as a foundation to transfer abroad. And as students in high school and potentially, the University of the Bahamas and elsewhere, sometimes we need to encourage them to be mindful of that and to recognize often the financial pressures, that they can help their families manage better if they contribute to the decisions as to how they sequence their education. But the short of it is, you can get a good quality foundation here, and then you can capitalize on it abroad. Of course, the other thing about it is that it does come with a lot of sacrifice. And that also speaks, sacrifice is important in finance, but sacrifice is also important in education. And so if we're now interacting with kids who are in high school and they're doing BJCs or O levels, there's a lot of sacrifice involved with that. And if you speak to anyone who's gone through that process and has excelled, they will tell you about the long hours that they would have put in studying and making decisions and trade-off between studying and doing other activities. Maintaining a balance, of course. But I think all of those, point to the kind of the discipline that's involved from an approach that carries over when we talk about financial literacy and good practices. It's hard for me. I think growing up my foundation is in the family island. So, literally, it was the village that was raising the kids. And so from that point of view, the influences were all around. And I can point to all of those people in those settings who were very important and who were the encouragement, who provided the encouragement to keep me focused in my studies and the like. Teachers are very important, and I would say that I benefited tremendously from the guidance and encouragement of teachers from primary school all the way up to the end of my high school years. That is incredibly important. And personal vision really means that you're able to plan and to identify the pieces or milestones that you have to achieve along the path, and to then begin to focus on plodding through. And a very important part of the vision for young people is recognizing the importance of education and the time that they have to put in to achieve the education result, and also the patience that they need to show. And again, I must admit, it is easy looking backwards to tell someone to be patient, that this is a very short span of your existence. But that is true. And the more we can get them to see that, I think the better off they will be long term. But that vision is very important, so that they can plan properly for their education. only advice I think I would give my childhood self would be to do more maths. Mathematics is very important, and I think because of my path, education-wise, I recognize the importance. I recognize as well sometimes in coming through, when you're in the family island setting, for example, sometimes we didn't even have a math teacher. Right? So at the BJC level, I did arithmetic until I came to New Providence, and I had teachers who could give me the math syllabus. But mathematics is one of those disciplines I think that I would encourage myself to explore and get deeper into. Well, I mean, financial literacy is about understanding the world around you and the kind of trade-off and choices that one needs to make in coming to decisions. And from that point of view, from as early as we're able to understand as children, as toddlers, we should begin to be trained in those important concepts around financial literacy. And the short of it is that we will always have a longer list of needs and wants than we can satisfy with our resources. And a part of the literacy and education is getting people to understand how to make choices and how to prioritize and how to plan and to understand how planning today impacts themselves in the future. First of all, we should be asking whether we can afford the items that we're spending funds on. As kids, I think we should appreciate that you're likely having allowances from your parents and others, and therefore you want to be considerate that those who are providing those resources to you have limited financial means, and therefore you need to be very considerate as to how you spend those resources. But you also want to plan out how you spend and try from an early age to operate so that you're not in a debt situation, so to speak. That you're not from that age having to borrow and to owe, unless those circumstances are really extreme and justified. One of the most important decisions that we make, I think, as young people is around education. And one of the things that sort of conflict with some of the decisions that we have to make is impatience about wanting to get out there and do things very quickly. So an example of the kinds of decisions that do impact people financially is delaying when we decide to say go on to college, or deciding not to go on to college because immediately upon leaving high school you find employment that seemingly is very lucrative, but you realize later in life that those who did go off, they're able to get more permanent and stable employment with higher income. So decisions around education is very important. And I think also too, in terms of relationships, you want to encourage our young people to have the priorities properly ordered, get the education out of the way as much as possible, and then turn to some of the other things. Again, the difficult thing though is that trying to relate to young people about these is often they may not identify as readily, but I think at a minimum, saying it to them and repeatedly saying it to them, and eventually when they're away from you, some of these sayings will come back to them and they'll eventually set in. Well, the work and the money issue is important, but the other element of financial literacy relates to how we use our finances. And why I'm saying that is because I know and I've experienced where you look at individuals who are working in very low income jobs and compared to others who are in very lucrative professions, starting out, $15,000, 20 years later, and yet the lower income person has somehow managed to establish themselves with greater financial security. So the work is important, the income that you're earning is important, but also being able to carve out some space for savings within that process is important. And so I've repeatedly seen it where persons have, tons of funds that they earn and that go through their hands, and others with much less that they manage over the course of their lifetime to build up much greater financial security for themselves, particularly when they get to the point of retirement, when you're not able to work, as steadily as you might hope. One of the most important things, I think, even when you're in high school, senior high, junior high, primary, is to begin to get into the practice of saving. That is very important. And as you become an adult, you also want to have a very regimented approach to saving on a monthly basis, to actually literally write out, your expenses and how you're going to use your income, and to be able to identify how much of your income you can save and then to put it aside. So getting into the practice of planning and executing around saving some fraction of your income is very important. For me, savings and investment is the same thing, to the extent that if I am able to put money in the bank or to place money in a fixed deposit or in a piece of property, I'm putting funds aside that I can turn to in the future and I can use. When we look at savings and investment as a country, we think about a country taking all of the collective financial savings that individuals put aside and putting those to use in building up businesses and enterprises that now generate the kinds of returns that we rely upon. So investments in a national sense means we have to take those savings and put them into businesses and enterprises that generate returns, long-term returns. So that is very important as for a country.